what we're continuing to try and focus on is not misaligning client expectations and needs with the wrong solution set.
In this episode of Advisor Revelations, hear which commission-free solutions can provide retirees more protection and guaranteed income, and which tools can help advisors choose the best solutions for their clients.
Welcome to the Advisors Revelations podcast. I'm Willie Jones, a consultant here at DPL Financial Partners. Today, we'll discuss how advisors, like our guest joining us today, work to get guaranteed income and keep up with inflation for their clients. I'd like to introduce you to our guest, who is a financial advisor at Savant Wealth Management, Bob Witt. Bob, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on, Willie. I look forward to our conversation today.
Perfect. Before we start our discussion today, I do want to remind our listeners to please subscribe to the podcast on your favorite streaming app for updates. If anything we talk about today interests you, be sure to connect with a DPL consultant on our website at dplfp.com. All right, Bob. So that our listeners have a better understanding of the type of firm you're with and your experience, can you share a little more about yourself and Savant and how long you've been partnered with DPL so far?
Sure. As you indicated, I'm a financial advisor with Savant Wealth Management. I'm a certified financial planner and a retirement income certified professional. Bulk of my time is spent working with an amazing group of retirees. And Willie, I've been doing this for almost 26 years. And perhaps like a lot of people listening on the podcast, when I started in this business back in the 90s, I quite honestly was a bit lost. Most of the people that were around me were making more money than I was. They were also doing things much differently than I thought was right. They were selling these front-end load investments and annuities and life insurance with huge back-end loads. And I was just really conflicted about this because I was just more interested in giving advice and being a trusted partner. So it took me about 10 years beating my head against the wall until I was finally introduced to a firm that really, instead of selling products, was getting paid for advice in an unconflicted way. I subsequently joined that firm called Huber Financial about 15 years ago, eventually became a partner. We had a really good run for many, many years, but we knew at some point in time we needed to make some short-term changes that would ultimately benefit our clients long-term, and that was becoming part of something a bit better. And that was merging with Savant Wealth Management a little over 3 years ago. Savant is a registered investment advisor, advising to over $12 billion. We have about 100 advisors and close to 400 employees serving our clients in 25 locations. Savant's really a rocket ship. It's innovative. It's one of the fastest growing firms in the industry. We really create customized investment and planning experiences for our clients. And to do so, we needed to be a disruptor in our industry and in the markets that we serve and challenge the status quo and look to innovate. In the spirit of that innovation, we decided a few years ago to explore a relationship with DPL. The advisors at the firm had some knowledge base of annuities because many of us grew up in that broker-dealer world, serving people using these insurance-based needs. But we became very intrigued at being able to offer those in a more unconflicted way. So even though we've partnered together for a few years, I feel like our relationship is just getting started.
Well, as you know, Bob, I work closely with advisors like yourself. We talked about this before, reaching out to others in Savant, but I also spend a lot of time consulting individual investors who are starting to hear more and more about using annuities for guaranteed income and protection. One of the biggest conversations is answering questions for retirees around commission-free annuities and how certain insurance solutions can really help folks grow their nest egg, unlike what you talked about before, being front-ended with all the high fees and the advisors winning. How can they be a part of that? With that being said, in today's market, what was your goal when partnering with DPL? Were more clients asking about these type of solutions, or is it more rooted in what you said? You wanted to find the best way to help your clients and not give them products that, get the advisors rich, as you mentioned?
Well, I think first and foremost, as a registered investment advisor, we have a fiduciary obligation to find and present unbiased solutions. To me, that means looking at all the potential solutions and finding the best mix for that particular client situation. Prior to our relationship with DPL, I'm not sure we had a well-rounded product or solution set. So that was our goal to start. And then secondly, in the last 10 years, if not the last 3 in particular, we have undoubtedly been through some of the most shocking and really terrifying years for investors. And I'm really convinced that the essential challenge for clients is not necessarily to be a better long-term investor, not really to find better investments, but to become a better investor. And I think what we found over the last decade or so, that it's important to align strategies with clients that will work for them instead of just forcing them into a solution that could be, perhaps the best solution on paper, but they can't stick with in these wild times and they bail out. And I really think that we've witnessed far too many investors not being able to stick with the traditional stock and bond portfolios that a lot of registered investment advisors support and follow. And that's concerning because you really can have a tremendously negative impact on your financial plan if you can't make it through these wild times, these downturns in markets. So we feel like annuities can be a way for some of our clients to get through some of these rough patches with some of the guarantees that they provide. And it really at the same time then allows the more traditional stock and bond portfolio to do its job over the course of time as well. So it really wasn't as much about people asking for these solutions as it was our own experiences leading us to try and find other solutions outside the traditional realm to be able to meet our clients' needs. I think the core of our business will always start with a more traditional total return type of approach, but we're trying to be evolving and disruptive as a firm, and we see DPL helping us to provide those solutions that didn't exist a number of years ago. And so it's allowing us to have a dialogue of openness with clients that we couldn't before around annuities.
I totally agree. I always tell people it's the psychology of the client. Even if you have a good plan, if they can't stick to it, it doesn't matter how good the plan is.
That's right.
With that in mind, when your team first came aboard and you started to using annuities, we really looked at the registered index-linked annuities, the RILAs, kind of the buffers, and also the fixed income with the long-term care feature on it. It's kind of been what you've been using the most of, I see. What's your thought process around using those, and how do you position those for your clients?
Well, as an advisor working for clients, I think you're worried about some of the expectations you make on behalf for them, really about a variety of things, the future returns, their spending habits, taxes, all these different assumptions. And I think the area that many of us more recently were worried about and continue to be a bit worried about are fixed income returns going into the future. And is there a suitable replacement for that? And then secondly, we were also, and this is always going to be the case, we know there's a sequence of return risk, particularly for those retirees early on in retirement. We were trying to find a way to minimize that risk. So when we go about evaluating solutions, we first need to pull it apart. So one of the things we do is to start by running illustrations with an eye towards understanding what are the potential internal rates of return that exist at different points in time. So we want to compare that with our expectations for what it's going to replace. And then really then what we want to do is see how it acts by incorporating that into a planning simulation or a planning scenario to see how much value it adds for that particular client. So when we started looking at something as simple as a fixed indexed annuity with an income rider, our initial concern is typically longevity for clients. And can we get internal rates of return, in some cases above 6-7%, depending upon how long a client lives. And that's a very compelling story for some clients because it really improves their financial plan over probably what fixed income might be able to provide. As an added benefit, many of our clients are self-insuring for long-term care or maybe don't have as much as they perhaps should. And so the long-term care is just an additional feature that's a bonus for a lot of clients. And that's really where something like the fixed indexed annuity comes into play. The registered index-linked annuity is, acts a little bit more like an equity, in our opinion, at least on the front end, sort of converts more to a bond-like solution if the income is turned on. So where we've seen this solution be effective is for clients who are a bit skittish on the market. They need the long-term growth in their portfolio. I think it gives those individuals a level of confidence of investing in something that will provide a higher expected return than cash or bonds, but gives them some downside protection, some comfort. And at the same time, it does give them a parachute or sort of a ripcord, if you will, that they could pull at some point in the future. Kind of acts like an option for them. It can be hard to simulate this in a planning scenario, but I think one of the benefits of working with DPL is the tools that we have access to simulate some of those market environments and conditions. And then it allows us to demonstrate what the expected income could be at a point in time, which we then use that to backfill a planning scenario. So we've become a heavy user of the Explore Guaranteed Income tool on the website. I think it's a really good tool to help narrow down the solution set. The core makeup of many of advisors, I'm sure, are very much that left brain analysis. So many of us are propeller heads by nature. And I really like this tool because I think it does a fantastic job of helping us to scratch that itch and then make sure that we've checked all the boxes on behalf of the clients as to which is a good solution for them. And so the same approach applies to sort of this internal rate of return concept. We want to make sure that it is a good solution before presenting it to a client and then simulate it in some of the planning scenarios that we do. But instead of replacing fixed income like a fixed income or a fixed index annuity would do, we're looking at the RILAs as a way to replace equities.
You kind of answered one of my questions I was going to bring up, but those are two really different annuities. And, they talked about people that are nervous to get back into the market. The RILAs play a perfect role to do that because you can kind of dip your toe in and you can diversify that investment and still have safety. But the question I know a lot of advisors will ask now is, how do you determine what's right for each client? And now they're using DPL for those clients. You kind of knew how they were. What did you do before there were commission-free annuities?
Sure. I think it's important to understand what it is you're trying to replace. Anytime you're looking to add something, by default, that means you're taking something else away, right? So if you said, I'm going to be adding a fixed indexed annuity, well, what I used to do was have a bond ladder or something of that nature. So what is it that you're taking away and how is that going to serve in the best interest of the client long term? So we attempt to approach it agnostically and try to compare it to something else most closely related in the portfolio. And then what we want to do is work with somebody within DPL initially. You folks are the experts on the products. We also want to integrate that with perhaps the insurance company product experts as well to make sure we fully understand the product and how it works to support the client needs and make sure we're thinking about the solution appropriately. We've had a couple of scenarios where there was some additional learning that we had on a solution or a product that we found out that we really didn't know before. So I think it's really important to get to know that solution before you go too far with presenting it to a client. And I know I've worked on some cases hand in hand with you where I give you all the intricate case details and then lean on you for advice as to the best product to consider. So once we did become more adept at understanding some of those products, oftentimes we would start by using the tools on your website to get some initial concepts. And then as needed, we'd go to you, as I said, to confirm those. But that's the beauty of technology, and I think the beauty of your platform too. I think it helps shorten the length of time to get to an answer. And sometimes we can even talk with clients during meetings about specific approaches and strategies, as opposed to maybe how we did it in the old days, which is to wait on illustrations. And then, a lot of these illustrations clients didn't understand anyhow. So the website has been very, very important. And of course, working with you has been. And in terms of what we had done prior to commission-free solutions, when we still do this, we approach the retirement income space for clients in terms of thinking about it according to time segmentation, or some people are familiar with the word buckets. We would typically have somewhere between, say, 5 and 7 years of fixed income, depending upon the client's appetite for risk. And then the balance would be in equities. And to demonstrate this to a client, we would use their spending assumptions to show that we had that cushion or ladder of fixed income to get through some of these market volatile periods. We would typically use the interest and dividends to synthetically create that paycheck. But with interest rates being as low as they've been, that's where we're trying to find other solutions to create a better outcome for our clients. And annuities just gave us another way to approach the problem of low interest rates and also the problem of skittish investors, and gave us ways to help clients think through the retirement income needs long term. Being an advisor is a very, very difficult job. I think any new concept or strategy, or even an old strategy, if you will, that annuities might be that you're considering adding today involves some discomfort, discomfort in terms of learning something new and the time commitment associated with that, discomforted in exposing that to a client and then having to explain why you're doing something maybe a little different than what you've done in the past. Maybe discomfort in terms of looking different than what your counterparts or peers are doing. But I've always felt like the best advisors are open to this challenge and continuing to evolve. And what I think annuities can do for advisors, and more importantly for clients in some instances, is be able to be more patient and stay in their seats and become better long-term investors.
I tell people there's nothing like a personal pension. Gets you through the rough times when you know the income's going to come in and be exactly the same no matter what the market performance. And it really sounds like you really started using annuities once they became commission-free to give it a chance, because before, I'm assuming because you're a registered investment advisor, you kind of wanted to stay away from that because of the conflict of interest and, like you said before in your story, the high commissions. But, still out there in the marketplace, how do you get clients to buy in? Because there's still a lot of them where the word annuity has a negative connotation to it, even though it could be the right thing for them. How are you approaching that with clients who maybe give you a little bit of pushback when you say the word annuity?
Sure. Yeah, it can be a tough hill to climb. I think one of the ways to get clients to understand that there's other ways to do things is to provide some context. Clients need to understand that the financial services world does evolve and the advice it provides continues to evolve. And maybe what we've done in the past may not be what's best for that particular client going forward. And so sometimes we have to pivot and incorporate new ideas and new strategies. Sometimes what you can do is point out some of the issues with their current strategy. And I think that can be difficult as people do have a hard time with change. Something like the RISA tool, which I know you folks have embraced, does some of that heavy lifting for us because it asks a lot of the questions for the different types of retirement income personalities. And it does so in a scientific way that's backed by research. So it helps us to get to a solution that's centered around client specific preferences. What we found to be of value is the way that we can then frame that there are different ways that retirees can experience retirement. And then we can point out the variety of ways that are available that gives clients a frame of reference as to what their preference might be. Then we can have that more specific conversation about the strategies. And I think when we do that, it paves the way for not starting with the concept of an annuity, but puts it in the framework of a reference of their particular situation. And then, ultimately, what clients are doing when they're doing something like the RISA, as an example, is they're interested in a sense of security and a sense of confidence that they're not going to run out of money. And whatever solution set that we use to support that, they're a little bit more open to that dialogue. But it is a bit of a hill to climb, but there's innovation in a lot of different areas, and you just have to embrace it and not assume that every particular client is as negative on what annuities might be as what you as an advisor might think, right? So just be open to the change, be open to having the conversation. I had one client in particular that I worked with, I started talking about annuities to him just as a starting point. He said, "I thought you hit your head on the way in to the meeting, like, well, what's going on here?" And as we had that conversation about there's an evolution in this industry and framed it, they became a little bit more open to the concept. And really, then we can take that path, which, oftentimes isn't like an overnight situation. It can take, in some instances, many meetings, many months, perhaps even a couple of years before somebody comes around to the concept of understanding that this could be a good solution for them.
Yeah, I keep telling people these are not as we say, your daddy's or your granddaddy's annuities. The marketplace really is changing to benefit the end user. And Bob, with that in mind, DPL's mission has always been to bring the best solutions available to RIAs, and we're constantly improving the platform and adding more solutions to help meet members' needs and their clients. I've been working with you for a while now. You even remember before then we were structured differently. What changes have you really seen along the way that kind of started your journey and really new products that you've liked and the evolution of DPL? What has impressed you the most?
I'd first say that as a firm, we really still have a long ways to go to create a wider adoption amongst all of our advisors. And that's just going to take some time, a commitment to time and education. And I think we have to commit to a level of internal training at our firm And as I said, being an advisor is not an easy job. There's just a lot of new technology and a lot of new concepts, a lot of new ideas, and you can really fall into the trap of doing the same thing that you've always done instead of keeping up with the changing landscape. And so, there's this pull between being too stubborn that everything you're doing has gotten you to where you are today and will continue to be the thing that gets you to the future, and then being too much like a leaf blowing in the wind and being too flimsy and changing course and changing strategy. There's a fine line between the two. What I found to be helpful when thinking through different solution sets is really ultimately what types of personalities we see in our daily lives and what strategies are going to give them the most amount of confidence. I give you a prime example of clients I know we all work with. These are clients who are suggestive that they're patient long-term investors, but they're the clients, when they get a bonus, they hold it in cash because they're prognosticating about where the market is potentially heading in the short run. They may not tell you, but history as a guide, these are the same people who probably required a lot more handholding during events like the pandemic, or perhaps they came to you because they went into cash in a different market environment, perhaps with a different advisor, and they just have some behavioral predispositions when it comes to investing. I suspect these same individuals think they're good investors, but we really know the truth. And I think that some of these clients are ideal candidates for annuities. They'll get a better return than they would have given their own behavioral biases and have a less stressful experience. These are the folks I think are a bit harder to convince of a different strategy or path makes sense. And I don't know if that's out of a sense of pride of thinking that they don't need the safety net or crutch, but I find that at least introducing this as an option is a way to help them see there are other paths. Then there are a handful of clients who come to you with their hand up saying, I'm not a good investor. I don't trust the markets. And please tell me there's a different way to invest. I'm just hearing stocks and bonds. And those are the folks I think it was harder for us to work with in the past, as you suggested, because we didn't have an unconflicted, non-commissioned way to do that. But now we have this path forward. And I think the technological and product innovation that DPL is committed to is impressive. I think that's what's changed the most for me as an advisor, is the willingness to utilize some of these solutions because they're now offered in this way, which makes having that conversation so much more easy than it used to be.
Definitely. Everything you said, I agree to. And I think that's a great spot to wrap up. I want to thank you again, Bob, for doing this as always, moving forward and trying new solutions. And I tell advisors, just have an open mind. Just give us a try. You'll be surprised what you share with your client to give them that peace of mind.
Yeah, Willie, I want to thank you and DPL for your partnership and the way you're disrupting the industry. Your consistent message of there's a different way to do things is working. And I would just tell any advisor that annuities aren't a bad thing. And in fact, they're a big part of our existing client base and potential clients that we might come across. And they deserve challenging the status quo. And what got you where you are today may not be what gets you to where you need to be in the future, as I said. So having these solutions as a part of your strategy set is going to meet your fiduciary obligation with some of your clients to continue to find the best solutions to fit their needs. That's what our job is.
No, that's a perfect point to end on. I want to thank everyone for being with us today. And again, let's connect at dplfp.com and subscribe for more episodes anywhere you listen to podcasts. Thanks a lot, Bob.
Thanks, Willie.
Thanks for listening. To hear more advisor revelations, go to dplfp.com and subscribe on your favorite podcast streaming app.